Hi guys, in this video we're going to talk about how to reintroduce the FODMAPs into your diet safely and without consequences or symptoms. No matter what your diagnosis, if you have SIBO or IBS, if you are on the low FODMAP diet, this is the video for you. Let's get started. We're going to talk about two different strategies that you could use to reintroduce the FODMAPs. I will give my personal preference when I'm working with patients in my office, and I'll also give you a glimpse into the conventional dietetic or the conventional medical take on the low FODMAP diet. Now, it's worth noting that the two methods are going to differ quite a bit. On the one hand, the goal of the dietetic world, the goal of the conventional gastroenterology and conventional medicine world is to say, hey, let's restrict your diet very broadly. Let's knock out all of these foods that could potentially be problematic, and then we're going to whittle the list down until we narrow it down to a handful of foods or a category of foods that you really don't tolerate, and then that is your diet ongoing indefinitely and forever. My goal is actually quite the opposite. I'm optimistic with all of my patients that you can tolerate all of these FODMAPs, maybe minus lactose and gluten, but I think that people should be able to tolerate all of these FODMAPs again, regardless of the category. And once we rehab your motility and your microbiota and your gut lining and your gut-brain axis, that does indeed happen. So I would tell you that these are both viable methods for reintroducing FODMAPs. But the big thing is you need to have your ducks in a row first, and you need to be treating your gut lining and your motility and your SIBO and your IBS, and oh my God, it goes on forever. And if that is overwhelming, I have such good news. I'm really excited to announce the launch of my first online course. It's called FODMAP Freedom in 90 Days. And obviously the nutritional aspect of that is going to be geared towards reintroducing 90% of the FODMAPs in 90 days or less. But the real meat and potatoes of it, the way that we're going to get there, the way we're going to get you to your ultimate goal of eating all of these amazing, delicious, healthy foods again, is by treating the underlying root causes, treating the cause of your irritable bowel syndrome or your dysmotility or your SIBO or whatever your diagnosis is. We have to get to the root cause. And once we get your ducks in a row and we treat that appropriately, I swear to God, magic happens. You can tolerate these FODMAPs again. I have seen it so many times, and that's why I'm bringing it finally into the internet for all to enjoy. The course is not officially launched yet, but if you put your email in the doobly-doo below, I would be happy to email you as soon as the course goes live. I hope to see you there, and I wish you the best of luck on your FODMAP journey. Okay, so the first method that you could use is what is typically done in the conventional medicine setting, or if you're working with an RD who's FODMAP trained, this is typically the method that they will use, and then we'll talk about my method a little bit later. So what you would do typically is you would look at the FODMAP acronym and you would pick out the oligosaccharides, disaccharides, fructose-containing foods, and the polyol-containing foods, and then you would go through it systematically and choose foods that are only in one category, test it out, and then go through each category methodically until you have a sense for your tolerance to it. So as an example, I'll point out a couple of things that would be really bad ones to try if you're using this method. So if you look, watermelon is high in polyols, it is also high in fructose, and it is also high in fructan. So if you were to test out watermelon and you reacted poorly to it, it caused bloating or diarrhea or upset stomach, you wouldn't have any way of knowing if it was because of the polyol, because of the fructose, or because of the fructan, or all of the above. So it really doesn't tell you any sort of clues as to what other foods you would possibly be able to tolerate. Opposed to that, let's see, we'll erase that. So things that are in more than one category are not going to be good candidates. However, if you look and you say, well, avocado really only has polyols in it. It's not high in fructan or GOS, it's not high in lactose or fructose. Therefore, you could try avocado, and if it goes well, you might start thinking, correctly so, well, gee, maybe I could tolerate some other foods that only contain polyols. So if you look at this shortened list, for example, avocado would be a good candidate. Apples are also higher in fructose, so that's not a good match. Cherry is also high in fructose. Stone fruits I didn't write over here, but they are high in fructan, so that wouldn't be a good match. Watermelon we covered. You could certainly try cauliflower. You could try corn, and if you were really jonesing for a piece of xylitol gum or erythritol, you could try those too. And you could go through this list, and as you introduce more and more foods from that one category, if it goes okay, you could be reasonably sure that you're going to tolerate that category of FODMAPs, and then congratulations, you brought back the polyols, you're good. Now, for step 2 in this process, you could also say, well, let's pick something that is in this category that I know I tolerate, plus one other category. So if you look, apples are also high in fructose, and cherries are also high in fructose. So these all could be your first bet. And then when you're going on to phase 2, you could try apples and cherries. And if those go okay, then it makes you start thinking, hey, maybe I'm going to tolerate fructose, and I can move on to other fructose-containing foods like mango, possibly agave or honey. Asparagus and watermelon both contain fructans, so you would wait until a little bit later. Now, say you're not really jonesing for avocado and you want to include something in your diet like onion and garlic. You could certainly go about it in a similar fashion. You could start the whole process of reintroduction and say, you know, there's a couple foods in the fructan compartment that I really have my eye on. So maybe your first decision is to test out onion and garlic, because these only really contain fructans. They don't contain polyols or any of the other FODMAPs. And by a similar vein, if you react fine to garlic and fine to onion, it makes you start thinking, hey, maybe I'm doing okay with the fructans and I could move on to other fructan-containing foods like blueberries or grapefruit or cashews or pistachios. And you would go about it in this way until you finally get a sense for what your tolerance is for each individual category of the FODMAP foods. And hopefully, coming out of this, you will have narrowed it down to 1 or maybe 2 categories that you truly cannot tolerate. And then that is your diet going forward, at least according to the conventional medicine world. Now, it's worth noting that I disagree with the conventional world in this sense, because I honestly think, and I can back this with a lot of clinical experience, that everybody can tolerate everything except lactose. Lactose intolerance can be more of a genetic mediated thing, especially in Black, Hispanic, and Asian populations. Basically, if you're not a Caucasian white person like me, you might have a hard time processing lactose just on a genetic level. Your body just gives up making lactase at some point, and that might not be in the cards for you. But besides lactose, and for example, if you are celiac or gluten sensitive, the wheat and company category, everybody should be able to tolerate these fruits and vegetables in abundance in their diet if you actually treat the root cause of what's going on. And that's where conventional medicine and conventional dietetics typically lags behind the integrative medicine world. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more throughout the video. All right, now that we've talked about the dietetic approach to this, I'm going to tell you my method, which I think is actually quite a lot more fun. Okay, now that we've talked about the conventional approach to introducing FODMAPs, let's talk about my method that I work with personally 99.9% of the time in my clinic. And that is, honestly guys, just look at this list. And if you've been on the low FODMAP diet, you could answer this just like that. In the comments, I would love to know your input. But if you look at the high FODMAP food list, just think, which food, if I could bring in one food today, which food would it be? What would bring me the greatest joy? Which one would give me the best quality of life improvement? Just think about it from that angle. And honestly, it's almost always one of the same 4 foods for most people. Most people will start back with onion and garlic, or avocado, or apples. Those are the big 4. But I just tell my patients, go home, make a wish list. And I think just mentally getting in that place of hopefulness and excitement and actually looking forward to eating something is therapeutic in and of itself. But I have my patients go home and I tell them, make a list, a hierarchy of the foods that you miss the most, all the way down to the foods that you miss the least from the FODMAP category. And I do tell people to leave out the gluten-containing grains and dairy to begin with, but go look at all of the fruits and vegetables, grains and legumes that you could possibly eat if you were to eat FODMAPs again, and rank them in a hierarchy of which ones you actually miss the most. And as we are getting the ducks in a row and we're treating the SIBO, the motility, the IBS, the microbiome, whatever it might be, as we get your ducks in a row, we're going to start strategically layering in more and more FODMAPs and testing, dipping our toe in the water to see how you tolerate them. And then once we have some sense of your tolerance, then we can pick up steam from there. But I really think that this method is just as good as the traditional route. because again, it just improves people's quality of life so much. And it also means that you don't have to be ultra scientific. So many people on this journey have done low FODMAP, or they've been treating their SIBO, they've been researching online and watching YouTube videos like this. And it's just nice to get out of that space of needing to be your own doctor, needing to be so on top of it and keep a diary of every symptom and a diary of your poops and a diary of your food. Honestly, like the first method kind of induces that more. And my method is much more freeing, I think. It just says, hey, what foods do you miss the most? Let's start with that. And you don't have to overthink what foods contain fructans or polyols or lactose or fructose. You just, this is going to sound so corny, but you follow your heart. And I think that that's really therapeutic. So that's what I do with most of my patients. But that's just me. And one more thing, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, leave a comment below. All of those things really, really help me grow this YouTube channel and make sure that I can dedicate more time to making super cool and ridiculous videos and educate the world on IBS and SIBO and FODMAPs and all things holistic gut health. So if you would just subscribe, ring the bell, and follow me on Instagram or Facebook, that would be super, super appreciated. I will see you in the next video.